When you hear the name Carthage, what do you think of? War elephants thundering through the Alps, Hannibal nearly bringing Rome to its knees, a proud city burned to the ground and lost to the sands of time? That's the usual version of the story. Dramatic, explosive, and tragic. But it barely scratches the surface. Because Carthage wasn't just a military rival to Rome. For over 8 centuries, it was a center of innovation, trade, exploration, and power. It began not as an empire, but as a small Phoenician colony, one outpost among hundreds, scattered across the Mediterranean. And yet, from those humble beginnings, Carthage would rise to dominate the Western Mediterranean, rivaling the Greeks in culture, the Romans in might, and surpassing both in wealth. In this video, we'll journey through 800 years of Carthaginian history, from its legendary founding by Queen Dido, to its reign as a maritime superpower, to its annihilation in 146 BC and beyond. Because the story of Carthage didn't end in fire, it echoes still. Carthage. The name instantly evokes images of war elephants crossing the Alps and Hannibal defying Rome. But long before it became a juggernaut of war, Carthage was something else entirely. A trading port, a cultural crossroads, a jewel of the Western Mediterranean. But to understand how this city came to rival the Roman Republic itself, we have to go back. Way back, 400 years before Carthage even existed. At the end of the Bronze Age, around 1200 BC, the great empires of the Eastern Mediterranean, Egypt, the Hittites, and Mycenaean Greece, collapsed in a wave of destruction known as the Bronze Age collapse. In the aftermath, the Phoenician city-states of the Levantine coast, Tyre, Sidon, Byblos, and others, emerged from the shadow of Egypt, newly independent and ready to chart their own path. The Phoenicians weren't empire builders. They were master seafarers, shipbuilders, and merchants. Their influence didn't spread through conquest, but through commerce. By the 9th century BC, Phoenician ships crisscrossed the Mediterranean, establishing over 300 colonies and outposts from Cyprus to Spain. Each served as a link in a vast maritime network, connecting Africa, Europe, and Asia. Among these outposts, one would rise above all the rest. Carthage. According to tradition, it was founded in 814 BC by a Phoenician princess named Elissa, or Dido, who fled political turmoil in Tyre. The story goes that she landed on the North African coast and, using her cunning, struck a deal with the local Berbers to purchase land, only as much as could be covered by an ox hide. Then she cut the hide into thin strips, encircled a hill, and claimed the land that would become Carthage, the new city. While the story is legend, the archaeological evidence is clear. Carthage was founded in the late 9th century BC, and it began as a small, modest port city, no more than 1,000 people. Nestled on the coast of modern-day Tunisia, just 80 miles across the water from Sicily. But its location was no accident. Carthage sat at the narrowest point in the central Mediterranean, a natural choke point between east and west. This was geography as destiny. In its early years, Carthage paid tribute to both Tyre and the surrounding Libyan tribes. It was just one of many Phoenician settlements and by no means the largest. But while others remained small outposts, Carthage's growth exploded. Its harbor, trade connections, and agricultural hinterland made it a commercial magnet. By the 7th century BC, it was exporting goods across the sea: purple dye, ivory, ceramics, glassware, and timber. Its ships carried goods from Egypt, Greece, Spain, and beyond. As it grew richer, Carthage also grew bolder. Around 650 BC, it planted its own colony in the Balearic Islands at Eleusis, known today as Ibiza. This marked a turning point. Carthage was no longer just a colony of Tyre, it was becoming a colonizer itself. Then came 2 pivotal events. First, in 586 BC, King Nebuchadnezzar II of Babylon laid siege to Tyre for 13 years, finally bringing the Phoenician heartland under Mesopotamian control. With Tyre's fall, Carthage assumed leadership of the Western Phoenician world. Second, under General Malchus, Carthage defeated the Libyans in battle and ceased paying tribute. It was now fully independent, politically and economically. Soon after, the city transitioned from aristocratic rule to monarchy. The first king, Mago I, established the Maganid dynasty and launched an era of military expansion. To counter Greek expansion in Corsica, Carthage formed an alliance with the Etruscans, clashing with the Greeks at the Battle of Eulalia in 539 BC. Though the Greeks claimed victory, their losses forced them to abandon the island. Corsica went to the Etruscans. Sardinia? Now it belonged to Carthage. By the end of Mago's reign, nearly all Phoenician colonies west of Sicily were under Carthaginian control. Some submitted willingly. Others, like Gadir, today's Cadiz, were brought under control by force. But Carthage didn't rule these colonies as a centralized empire. Apart from its immediate territory in North Africa, it governed indirectly through treaties. Colonies were allowed autonomy, but in return they had to pay tribute, 10% of their revenue, adopt Carthage's enemies and allies, and provide troops for the Carthaginian army. In 510 BC, the Spartans attempted to establish a foothold in Libya. Carthage quickly crushed them, allying with Libyan tribes to repel the invasion. The next year, Carthage signed its first treaty with Rome. Rome was now a republic, and the treaty established spheres of influence. Carthage ruled the West, Rome the Italian mainland. This was the first of several treaties between the two powers, and it reflected just how dominant Carthage had already become. But the real challenge lay to the west, Sicily. The island was divided. The west held Punic colonies, the east, Greek city-states. And at the center of it all stood Syracuse, the most powerful Greek city in the western Mediterranean. In 480 BC, Carthage launched a major invasion of Sicily, the goal to bring the entire island under Punic control. The result, disaster. At the Battle of Himera, Carthage's army was crushed. King Hamilcar committed suicide on the battlefield. The loss was catastrophic. Back home, the shock led to a revolution. The monarchy was abolished, and a republican system took its place. 2 suffets, elected annually, served as chief magistrates. A senate of 300, composed of wealthy landowners and merchants, held real power. Carthage avoided open war with the Greeks for the next 70 years, but it didn't sit idle. Instead, it expanded its influence across North Africa, Spain, and the islands of the Mediterranean. During this period, Carthaginian explorers achieved feats that rival even modern maritime legends. Hanno, the navigator, sailed past the Canary Islands, possibly reaching as far as Mount Cameroon. His brother Hamilco explored the Atlantic coast of Gaul and even reached the British Isles. There are even claims that Carthaginian sailors reached the Azores, supported by coin finds, though this remains debated. Meanwhile, Carthage developed revolutionary shipbuilding techniques. Instead of crafting ships from scratch, they used modular parts, each marked with symbols for quick assembly. A Carthaginian shipyard could construct multiple warships per day, while Greek or Roman carpenters took weeks to build just one. Carthage was not just a center of trade and war, it was also a deeply religious society. Its gods were ancient, inherited from Phoenicia. Baal-Hamon, god of fire and fertility; Tanit, protector of the city and goddess of war and rebirth; and others like Melkart, Eshmun, and Resheph. Worship involved sacrifices, both animal and human. Roman and Greek writers accused Carthage of burning children alive as offerings to Baal and Tanit. For centuries, these stories were considered propaganda. But excavations at the top head of Carthage, a vast open-air sanctuary, revealed thousands of urns filled with the cremated remains of infants and animals. Stone stelae nearby bore inscriptions dedicated to the gods. Whether symbolic or literal, it's clear that human sacrifice, especially of children, was practiced in times of crisis. By the 4th century BC, such rituals faded, replaced by animal and symbolic offerings. But the reputation remained, and Rome would never forget it. In 264 BC, Carthage was drawn into a conflict over the city of Messana in Sicily. Roman betrayal of a Carthaginian admiral triggered open war. The First Punic War. It was brutal. Rome dominated on land, Carthage at sea. But when a Carthaginian ship wrecked on Roman shores, Roman engineers reverse-engineered it. They added a new invention, the corvus, a boarding bridge. Now naval battles became land battles at sea, and Rome had the upper hand. After 23 years, Carthage surrendered in 241 BC. It lost Sicily, paid reparations, and faced immediate rebellion from unpaid mercenaries. This mercenary war was more violent than anything before. Carthaginian generals were lynched, cities rebelled. But under Hamilcar Barca, Carthage crushed the uprising. Then he turned his gaze to Spain. Hamilcar, his son-in-law Hasdrubal, and eventually his son Hannibal, built a Carthaginian empire in Iberia, rich in silver, agriculture, and troops. In 218 BC, Hannibal attacked Saguntum, a Roman ally, sparking the Second Punic War. He marched across the Alps, losing half his men but shocking Rome. He won devastating victories at Trebia, Lake Trasimene, and Cannae, where 50,000 Romans died in a single day. But Rome refused to surrender. Instead, it fought a war of attrition, attacking Carthaginian holdings in Spain and eventually landing in Africa. In 22 BC, at the Battle of Zama, Scipio Africanus defeated Hannibal. Carthage lost Spain, its fleet, and was forbidden to wage war without Roman approval. But Carthage recovered, economically. By 150 BC, it was thriving again. This alarmed Roman senators, especially Cato the Elder, who ended every speech with "Carthago delenda est." Carthage must be destroyed. When Carthage defended itself against Numidian raids, Rome used it as an excuse. In 149 BC, Rome launched the Third Punic War. Carthage resisted for 3 years, but in 146 BC, the city was breached, burned, and its people enslaved. The city was erased. But the story didn't end there. In 146 AD, exactly 292 years later, a Punic-descended man named Septimius Severus was born in Africa. He would become Emperor of Rome. Under his reign, Punic gods like Baal and Tanit were honored in Roman temples. Carthage lived on through its people, through language, customs, and legacy, until the Arab conquests of the 7th century. Roman Carthage survived into the 13th century, before being destroyed for good. Carthage was not just a city. It was an idea of trade, innovation, power, and resistance. And its ashes still whisper through history. If you enjoyed this journey through Carthage's epic rise and tragic fall, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the ancient world. Thanks for watching, and remember, civilizations may fall, but their stories never die.